In today's news video, we cover Russian Navy's only aircraft carrier and cruiser face major operational issues and risk of nuclear disaster. U.S. Army's Bradley infantry fighting vehicle receives improved active protection system. Large number of Russian soldiers reportedly transferred to Belarus in recent days. U.S. to begin training Ukraine on Patriot missile system. Ukraine warns of possible large-scale Russian military mobilization for offensive in Ukraine. Enjoy watching and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on important news. Defense industry of the Russian Federation failed to modernize and put into order the only aircraft carrier of the Russian Navy, Admiral Kuznetsov, and the Admiral Nakhimov nuclear-powered cruiser. Therefore, these ships are as good as lost for the Russian fleet because the amount of problems concerning their operating condition is much more than assumed previously. This statement comes from the Guildhall media outlet with reference to their sources in intelligence. According to the information obtained by Guildhall, the hull of Admiral Kuznetsov from the third deck and below has rusted from outside to the point that the holds began to fill with water and the ship lost the ability to move on its own. The Russians planned to tow the aircraft carrier out of the dry dock to continue repair works, but they postponed the towing for an indefinite term. Otherwise, during such works, Admiral Kuznetsov may fall over on its side or sink altogether. As for the Russian Admiral Nakhimov nuclear-capable missile cruiser, the situation is a bit more unique. It turns out that Russia did not manage to restore the safety system of the nuclear power plant on the ship. The protection of the graphite rods in the reactors have completely rusted. Simply put, there is a risk that the reactors on Admiral Nakhimov explode, and instead of a nuclear warship, the Russians will get a nuclear catastrophe, a mini-Chornobyl. Out of all of the systems on Admiral Nakhimov, only navigation equipment works properly. This, while the Russian propaganda machine was trying to convince that soon the cruiser will get Kalibr and Zircon missiles and return to service by the end of 2023 at latest. Open data says the entire crew of the Admiral Nakhimov cruiser should be around 740 personnel, and the crew of the Admiral Kuznetsov aircraft carrier is about 2,000 people. There is a possibility, though, that part of these Marines would be reassigned to the ground and deployed to Ukraine to fight against the Ukrainian army. Elbit Systems' Iron Fist light decoupled active protection system achieved further improved performance in recent U.S. Army live-fire testing on the Bradley infantry fighting vehicle. The U.S. Army announced that the testing completed in October 2022 demonstrated improvements in both durability and system effectiveness from previous testing. The Army is very pleased with the improved performance of this system, said Major General Glenn Dean, the Army's Program Executive Officer for Ground Combat Systems. The software improvements since 2018 are more consistent and stable. We see continued future growth opportunities for the system, but this active protection system better protects our soldiers and vehicles on the battlefield. The system tested would make the Bradley significantly more survivable against threats such as rocket-propelled grenades and anti-tank guided missiles. The U.S. Congress provided additional funding in fiscal year 2022 toward the goal of equipping an entire Army brigade of Bradley vehicles, 152 vehicles, in 2025 with continued funding. U.S. Army official site Army.mil notes that an integrated active protection system is being considered with the development of the Army's Optionally Manned Fighting Vehicle, OMFV, slated to replace the Bradley in coming years. This train repeated the exact route of the previous one which, as was confirmed later, had also arrived in Vitebsk on the night of 5 to 6 January, carrying 700 to 800 soldiers. Therefore, at least 1,400 to 1,600 Russian soldiers could have been transferred to Vitebsk in the last 2 days. Additional confirmation is that Russian armed forces soldiers were seen going around in groups and visiting shops in different places in the city on the evening of January 6th, Belaruski Hadjuin pointed out. Another trainload of Russian soldiers, approximately 700 to 800 people, was moved to Belarus on the night of 6 to 7 January. Source: Belaruski Hadjuin, an independent Belarusian military monitoring media outlet. Details: it is reported that a special train with 15 passenger carriages passed through Smolensk station on its way to Belarus. It arrived at Vitebsk station in Belarus, with the carriages carrying some 700 to 800 Russian armed forces personnel. The U.S. will begin training the Ukrainian military on the Patriot missile system at the end of this month, CNN reports. According to a Pentagon spokesman, the training will take several months. The Pentagon said the U.S. is considering sending Ukrainians to the U.S. for Patriot missile system training and is also considering training abroad or a combination of both. The Ukrainian military is warning that Putin is planning to mobilize up to 500,000 new troops in preparation for a new offensive in Ukraine. Speaking to the German news site T-Online, Andriy Cherniak, a Ukrainian military intelligence service representative, said that they believe the mobilization will be announced on January 15th, after the Orthodox Christian Christmas. Cherniak estimated 500,000 people would be mobilized, with those living in cities such as Moscow and St. Petersburg to be most impacted. We expect them to conduct offensives in Donetsk and Kharkiv regions, as well as possibly Zaporizhia, but to defend in Kherson and Crimea. This is the number of men they will need for such a task, said Skibitsky. If Russia loses this time around, then Putin will collapse, said Skibitsky, according to reports. The new infusion of manpower will massively increase the number of soldiers Russia has deployed in occupied Ukraine. According to a Ukrainian official, there are currently 280,000 troops on the ground in Ukraine, per the Evening Standard. A second mobilization has been discussed for months. In November, Russian regional leaders wrote to Putin demanding he stops mobilizing reservists to fight in Ukraine. Pro-Kremlin military bloggers in Russia have circulated claims that another mobilization will take place, according to the Institute of War. Russia has dismissed reports that a second wave of mobilization was imminent, and Putin claimed last month it was pointless.